Hey, Restore the Fourth. I'm Dan Johnson, founder and national director of PANDA, People Against the NDAA. I couldn't be there with you, so Ed Lee and Matt Redinger, who I really thank for putting this event on, asked me to speak to you via Skype, or at least record a little bit of a piece for you. And it's going to be about something you may not often hear about, you may not often know, and may not often understand. As most people head in, including myself, head into politics with a different view than this really brings out. Thomas Jefferson once said, "In matters of principle, stand like a rock. In matters of style, swim with the current." Today, we have a battle of principle versus compromise. We're dealing with the very basic principles that make up a free society. We're dealing with liberty. We're dealing with individual rights. We're dealing with freedom. We're dealing with the basic foundations of American culture. And in these basic foundations, there are sappers and miners chipping away at them, from Congress to the executive branch to the courts. There are people chipping away at the very pillars that make up our free society. But yet, the people have started to have enough. Whether it's the National Defense Authorization Act, authorizing indefinite detention without a charge and without a trial, indefinitely, or the NSA, the National Security Agency, and spying and creating a domestic surveillance state here in this country, the American people have started to say enough. Calls to Congress, letters to their representatives, showing up at town hall meetings. All of these show the angst the American people have. And that's important. Former British Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli coined what we call the cycle of the body politic. Is it a specific cycle of how a country rises and how a country falls? This usually takes approximately 250 to 300 years. America's 250th year is 2026. But we can break that cycle for the first time here in America. Why? Two reasons. Number one, the individual liberties and the values and the foundations that make up this country give us something to go back to. The Bill of Rights gives us something to point to and say, this is something you need to recognize. This is something you were created for. In fact, in our founding document, the Declaration of Independence says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. For this reason, governments were instituted among men. The purpose of our government is to protect our rights. Therefore, when our government sways from that, we still have something to look toward. We still have a foundation to look at. And secondly, the internet. For the first time, a vast tool of instantaneous communication that no matter what the information, even if the government does not want us to know, we can find out. Those two tools can save this country, can protect your family, can provide a future for the next generation. But there is a trap. Albert Einstein said it's insanity to do the same thing over and over and over again and expect different results. Yet today, in response to the National Security Agency, in response to the overarching domestic terror powers of the government trampling on our rights, in response to an overarching surveillance state, the politicians and the establishment groups are leading us down a path that every other group, every other political movement has gone down this path in other countries and sometimes here in America and failed. That path has one name. That path is called compromise. In matters of principle, we must not compromise. You will have your representative, you'll be talking to him one day and say, you know what, you need to do something about the NSA. Whether it's a state representative, whether it's congressman, whether it's your city councilman. You need to do something about the NSA. You need to do something about this surveillance state. And what they will say is probably no. But if they go with you, and this is where the danger lies, they will say, well, I'd love to do this, but I'd love to actually insert an ordinance into my city's charter saying we will not allow domestic spying, and if necessary, we'll use the police department to enforce that. But it's not politically feasible. Just compromise to get the bill passed. We need to get a step in the right direction. We need to get the bill passed. Well, what happens when you have a step in the right direction? You have a step to nowhere. Case in point. The Real ID Act, passed by Congress, mandated a national ID card. The people of Michigan, along with many other states, said they didn't want this. They said that we'd had enough. They went to their representatives and said, we want you to introduce a bill. The state will not participate in Real ID. Well, the representatives looked at them and said, okay, well, we don't want to participate in Real ID, but that bill will automatically fail. That bill will not do anything. So we're going to introduce a resolution for now as a step in the right direction. And then we're going to introduce a Real ID bill to stop this action. But we got to get a step in the right direction first. What happened? They passed the Anti-Real ID Act resolution, and to this day, a real bill has not been passed, and Real ID Act and Real ID could be implemented in the state of Michigan. What happened? The representatives pushed this through. They cheered it on as a victory. They asked all the groups, all the coalitions that were for them to cheer it on as a victory. And what happened? They tossed the natives a bone, and they went about business as usual. When you have a government that believes it can spy on you for no reason, without a warrant, and claiming terrorism to be the case, you cannot compromise. You cannot allow them to throw you a bone. So when you go up to your elected officials, whatever legislation you use, I recommend going from a state and local level. It's up to you. However you want to go about it. One thing is certain. Never accept compromise. If you need to go to interposition to say your state will not only not allow this, and will not only say we're not going to aid you in engaging in tyranny in our state, but will say we're not going to allow you to do this, and if necessary, our police departments, our county sheriffs, our state police will honor their oath to the Constitution and say no, and say enough and not allow you here. My friends, you're going to do battle. I recommend your cities, I recommend your counties, but wherever you do battle, you're going to do battle. They will do everything from publish false information to trick you, to try to coerce you, to try to buy you out. It's all there. Because they've done this for years, and the American people have accepted it. It's time we say no compromise. It's time we say that the education aspect of a strong piece of legislation is more than enough. And if it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass, but at least we educated them right. Don't let your representatives say, well, this is what will pass. Don't let other groups around you say, well, this is what will pass, because that is compromise. And that will not lead to a freer, more just America. Again, I want to thank you to Matt Redinger. I want to thank you to Ed Lee, my Pennsylvania State Team leader, both for putting this event on. My only words to you: on matters of style, swim with the current. On matters of principle, stand like a rock. Thank you very much. Let's take back this country.